Well, it's Groundhog Day. And I can't help but think of that 1993 hit comedy with Bill Murray entitled Groundhog Day, where he plays this self-absorbed weatherman who has to go out to Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania, to see the famous groundhog come out and look for its shadow. And he ends up having to live this day over and over and over again. And that day was Groundhog Day, which I can't help but makes me think of the 1993 hit classic movie starring Bill Murray called Groundhog Day, where he plays a self-absorbed weatherman who has to go out to Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania to see Punxsutawney Phil come out and look for his shadow. But he has to live this day over and over and over again. And that day is Groundhog Day. Which makes me think of the 1993 hit. You don't need to hear that again, do you? The movie does that. He repeats this day over and over and over again. And some people who have way too much time on their hands have figured out that he probably relived the day for 34 years in that movie. They've done the math and figured it all out. Eventually, he breaks the cycle. I'm not going to tell you how he did it in case for some reason you've gone 30 years and never watched this movie. I want you to be able to experience it anew. But it's a story of someone stuck in a cycle that happens again and again and again. And it takes quite a bit for them to get to a point of redemption. This Bible story read today is a breaking from a regular pattern for all the characters involved. It starts off by telling you that Jesus was getting out of town because things were getting a little exciting there, and he needed to go from Judea to Galilee, and that meant that he had to, that it was necessary that he go through Samaria. That's not true. I mean, it is the direct path, but every good Jew at the time would take a little detour to the east. It took longer to get around Samaria, but they would not go through because Jews and Samaritans did not get along. Now, nowadays, we think of a Samaritan as a good person. We name hospitals after Samaritans now. Good Samaritan hospitals. But Samaritans were not well received. The reason why Samaritan is a good term nowadays is because of Jesus. Because of this story, but also because of a story about a good Samaritan who stopped and helped someone who got beaten up alongside the road. And that story is shocking because the Jewish listeners at the time would go like, a Samaritan? Those people who don't even know how to worship right? And there's always been conflicts between them, between the Jews and the Samaritans. So Jesus doesn't really have to go straight through, but he does. And he ends up at a well at noontime, and there's a woman there. And those of you who were with us last week and we talked about Nicodemus coming to see Jesus at night because he didn't want to be seen, well, the same thing is happening here in the very next chapter of John. Because this is a woman who does not want to be seen. Because you do not go to the well at high noon. Do you know why? Because in this area of the world, it is hot at noon. It's the most ridiculous time. You go to the well at noon when you don't want anyone to see you, when you don't want to be interacting with anyone. She is in a place of shame, or at least she just doesn't want to hear it from those people in town who are going to give her a hard time because of her life and what's been going on in her life. The deal with all the husbands and the guy she's with now isn't even her husband. Jesus comes into this situation. So even the setup is a breaking from norms, a breaking from what would be expected in the situation. And we get in the conversation and Jesus says, hey, can you give me a drink of water? And this is not a thing. The Jews and the Samaritans did not just like casually, hey, let's go get a drink. Oh, yeah. I mean, it was not good between them. And certainly the Jew who thought themselves better than a Samaritan would not be asking for a drink from them. She even starts to worry if Jesus is a little bit off because you came here for water, but you didn't even bring a bucket. What's up with that? He tells her, I have something better than the water that could come from this well. I have a living water. Breaks from the idea of what they're doing at that well at the very start of it. And then she starts pointing out the differences between them. But you're a Jew, I'm a Samaritan. We think you're supposed to worship here at the mountain in Samaria. You think the right place to worship is in Jerusalem. Like, this can't go well. And he's like, listen to me. There's going to come a time where it's not about the mountain, it's not about Jerusalem, that the real worship is going to be when people worship in truth and in spirit. The idea that worship is not just simply a ritual that you just line yourself up in and go through the steps. Even today, you and I need to be careful that we don't turn worship into just a little kind of ritual of we just do the things and chuk, 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 and without a real truthful look at ourselves and our own spiritual lives, without a real engagement of our spiritual selves, we just chuk, 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 punch our clock, get through the service, and out we go. But real worship is one that takes a truthful look at ourselves, at our friends, at our family, at our neighbors, at our community. Real worship is something that goes beyond the walls of a sanctuary. Real worship is how we live our lives and how we stand up for grace and truth and love and forgiveness and justice and mercy. The story doesn't end with their interaction because afterwards she takes off. Do you notice? She left her jar. She's so excited, she left her jar and headed out to tell people, you need to come and see this Jesus that I have met, that I know now. The very same woman who just that same day came to the well at noon to avoid the crowd, now is going to the crowd because what she has to share is so good, it's worth the awkward, it's worth the uncomfortable. It's whatever broken in that relationship, she's got something important to share and she's willing to put herself out there to do it, and she does. Meanwhile, the disciples show up. The disciples do not look good in a lot of our Gospels. They're always like 3 steps behind Jesus. And then they trip back one more. And you know, well, you need to get something to eat. And he's like, I don't need this sustenance you're talking about. That what's fulfilling is to do the will of God, and that's what I'm doing. I'm all right. And they're like, well, wait a minute, nobody brought him a sandwich. Did you bring him a sandwich? I didn't bring him a sandwich. What's going on? They don't get it. And it's you know, it's a woman he's talking to, which again, in this context, this woman by herself, he really shouldn't be talking to her. She's a Samaritan. There's so many social norms that Jesus is breaking, and the disciples don't know what to do with all this. But because of this woman's witness, because of her overcoming whatever shame she was carrying or whatever hesitancy she had, those people in the area came to know Jesus through the way she came to know Jesus because she realized that Jesus already knew her. In our own lives, we do have to watch out that our spiritual journey doesn't just become a series of routines where it's not in truth and spirit, it's in routine and just la-di-dying our way through our faith. So really take a hard look at how is our relationship with Jesus Christ? How is our connection with our God? And more so, to go to our family, to our friends, to not simply let the occasion go by when we don't find a way to witness the joy that we have found in a relationship with God and a relationship with Jesus Christ. And I know, it gets a little sticky, it's uncomfortable, I just don't know, talking to this person and, in my own family, and we just don't talk about that anymore. It's like, what you have is too precious for you to just hold on to it yourself. It's worth the risk of embarrassment. It's worth the risk of a little awkwardness, because what you have is that good. If it's not that good, just don't say a word. If it's just not that good. If you don't have anything to share, you don't have anything to share. But you do. You have something precious and beautiful. And it's not just for your own sake of a true worship in spirit and truth in your own life, but it's also so that those others around you can know about it. And it can build them up and give them the opportunity to maybe give God and church and all that faith stuff another chance. But it goes beyond that because we need to have the courage to speak up across the boundaries, to speak for when there's a need to speak for the issues of justice and mercy. Because if we don't speak up, then the word of the Lord sits quiet. And it was never meant to sit quiet. During the rise of Hitler in Nazi Germany, there was a pastor there, a Lutheran pastor, Martin Niemöller, and he had this to say. At first, they came for the socialists, and I said nothing because I wasn't a socialist. And then they came for the trade unionists, and I said nothing because I wasn't a trade unionist. And then they came for the Jews, and I said nothing because I was not a Jew. And then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. When evil steps out, we need to step in. When injustice steps out, justice needs to step in. When what is wrong is speaking out, what is right needs to speak. And I know that a lot of you are just tired. I know that life is not just a walk in the park and easy, and there are stresses and strains, and you can't do everything. I know that there's a limited amount of what you have to give, and I'm telling you to pour it into your own spiritual development because that will give you the kind of sustenance that's beyond food. It's living water. It's the living bread so that you can have something to share with those who are near and dear to you. And when the community is facing injustice or evil or wrongs, you will have the strength because you have tended to who you are in your relationship with Christ. You cannot do all the good that the world needs, but the world needs you to do the good that you can. Do the good that you can. Because what you have been given is too precious to let it be silent, to let it be hidden, to let it be not known. To God be the glory. Hallelujah. Amen.